In today's video, we're going to talk about the controversial Chinese businessman named Li Fangwei, also known as Carl Li, widely regarded as the world's most dangerous arms dealer. So let's get started. Li Fangwei's precursors. During the 1980s, two scientists and engineers, Abdul Qadir Khan and Gerald Bull, used their knowledge for evil purposes. For example, Abdul Qadir Khan sold nuclear weapon blueprints to Muammar Gaddafi and centrifuges to Iran and North Korea using a network of white-collar criminals from Germany and South Africa. On the other hand, Canadian artillery expert Gerald Bull wanted to make a supergun capable of launching huge projectiles into orbit, but he was stopped when assassins shot him while he was searching for his apartment keys in Brussels. Bull was also thought to have been involved in working on an experimental artillery machine on the tropical island of Barbados. Eventually, he was arrested by Pakistani police for his wrongdoings in the early 2000s and placed under house arrest in one of his villas in the Pakistani capital, Islamabad. The story of Li Fangwei is no less intriguing, perhaps even more so. Who is Li Fangwei, and what does he do? Li Fangwei is a controversial Chinese businessman who caught the eye of the US government over the past decade. At first sight, his life seems ordinary, if not boring. People recognize him for his businesses, reportedly trading vegetable oil and graphite from an unremarkable office block in the foggy Chinese city of Dalian. So, he looks like every other ordinary person. The only thing that visibly sets him apart from others, according to the FBI, is a mole on his upper lip. But observe deeper, and Li Fangwei is not the ordinary person he presents. Many sources suggest, including the FBI, Fangwei has been up to something massive for the past decade. Reportedly, he's accumulated millions of dollars by selling embargoed goods to Iran for their UN-outlawed ballistic missile program. Some think that if you open up a random Iranian missile, there's a strong chance you'll come across a part supplied by Li Fangwei. He's cleverly using a Chinese legal loophole where his goods can theoretically be used legally for purposes other than weapons, anything from metals to gyroscopes. What is Li doing better than Khan and Bull? Even though Khan and Bull were successful in their businesses, eventually the police managed to catch them, meaning they lacked one thing their successor Li possessed. Over time, Li has acquired an enviable skill of knowing how to keep a low profile. People in his circle compare him to a chameleon because he knows how to stay under the radar, avoiding too much attention. As a consequence, Li's whereabouts are currently unknown. Despite numerous sanctions, restrictions, and accusations against him, he still manages to successfully supply ballistic missile parts to Iran. If you take into account his stealth skills and massive manipulation of the legal system, his arrest seems unlikely, at least for now. What did US officials do to try and put a stop to Li's business? Li's trades with Iran have caused annoyance, panic, and nervousness in Washington. Of course, they decided to make some effort to stop Li. First, the US State Department has put Li and companies associated with him on a sanctions list. The second measure was done by the Treasury Department, which has confiscated millions of dollars of Li's bank accounts and prohibited him from doing business with US companies. US diplomats also made efforts to stop Li, having addressed Beijing multiple times, ordering Chinese authorities to investigate Li's companies and their possible violations of US export laws. Since these measures obviously weren't enough to stop Li's business, the FBI went one step further and put an unbelievable bounty of $5 million on Li's head. That's also something that distinguishes him from other proliferators of weapons of mass destruction, being the most significant bounty ever offered for capturing an illicit arms dealer. The feds have charged Li with one count of conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, 2 counts of actually violating the act, 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud, as well as 2 counts of actual wire fraud. Li's reaction. Li wasn't particularly worried about measures taken against him. So he decided to expand his business online. Multiple Chinese e-commerce sites allowed Li-affiliated companies to advertise their products such as graphite. One well-known site, Alibaba, removed one of these listings after it was discovered by researchers. But some sites, like Gongchang, didn't do the same, and stated that the advertised products were legal and the official owner of questionable companies is not Li. So they didn't see the problem in collaborating with them and advertising the products. Now comes the most interesting part according to people who are familiar with Li's work. Not only does Li manage to stay under the radar and avoid authorities, but he also manages to sell questionable products that can be used both by ordinary people and the armed forces. But when police start asking questions, Li's companies always have the answer ready. These products could always pass as products needed for commercial and industrial purposes rather than for arms production. The best example of that is the large Dalian factory that produces graphite, a material that's in demand from Chinese aluminium smelters. However, it can also be used to make missile jet vanes, which help steer a missile by altering its thrust. Li was believed to have been the owner of this company. Li has taken over the methods of Khan and started manufacturing and developing his own high-tech missile parts. Reportedly, some researchers revealed that Dalian Xinhang Electromechanical Equipment Company is producing highly advanced components used in aerospace and missile guidance systems, fiber optic gyroscopes. What makes it more interesting is the company's alleged association with Li. These fiber-optic versions of gyroscopes appear to be some of the best available and are very difficult to make. Meanwhile, Iran's missile industry has been procuring gyroscopes from abroad for an extended period of time. Iranian missile makers demand these exact same gyroscopes. In response, the US government put a Chinese scientist specializing in fiber-optic gyroscope design on a blacklist for cooperating with Li. The strife between US and Chinese officials in the context of Li Fangwei. Chinese officials have stated that imposing sanctions on Chinese companies or individuals is absolutely unacceptable. US officials claim that the Chinese government hasn't done enough to investigate Li and didn't take him and his business seriously. Chinese officials answered these accusations and addressed Washington by telling them their approach was wrong, as well as their accusations of Li. There were some accusations that Li had been in business for so long due to his good ties with the Chinese government, which protected him continuously. According to an analyst who's been closely studying Li and his business, it's absurd that Li had been working for the government because it would have been revealed a long time ago, since Li is somewhat careless in hiding his online activity. Some also think that Li may have been a government official, while others believe that his grandfather had been a legendary colonel in the People's Liberation Army during the Korean War. This might be the reason Li has managed to remain free and out of reach from the law. Also, his activities haven't crossed any Chinese laws, unlike the American ones. The Chinese legal system either doesn't want to prosecute Li or doesn't have mechanisms or reasons to do so. Chinese and US officials are constantly addressing each other on this topic. US officials point out that China has to change its legal system accordingly to match that of the US. The truth is that the US definitely cannot deal with Li on its own, since every time they sanction one of his companies, he registers a new one under the names of his associates or family members. Li is definitely safe for now, mostly thanks to the limited power of the US in China, but also thanks to the Chinese disinterest in his case. Yet, if he continues to expand his fortune, he might draw more unwanted attention to himself, which will eventually put him in danger. That's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and comment on this video. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like what we're doing and want us to continue with more cool content. Till the next time.